the millionaire who laughed at love until it cost him his soul. Hello, everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It is quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support truly means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now let us return to our main character. Adrian Vale was a man the world admired and feared at the same time. In the heart of Silicon Valley, he built an empire from the ashes of failure. People called him the man who could turn code into gold. His company, Vale Technologies, powered some of the most advanced artificial intelligence systems on the planet. He had money, reputation, and influence that reached every corner of the digital world. But beneath all the brilliance and power was a heart that had long forgotten how to feel. Years ago, before he became a millionaire, Adrian had believed in love. He once thought emotions were what made human beings unique until the woman he loved betrayed him. Her name was Celia, a software designer who had shared his dream of creating the first true emotional algorithm. Together, they had built their future line by line. But when success came within reach, Celia sold his prototype to a rival company and vanished. The betrayal shattered something inside him. He swore that he would never again trust a feeling he could not measure, a word he could not verify, or a promise he could not code. From then on, love became a joke to him, a glitch in human design, a weakness that led only to loss. So Adrian did what he knew best. He turned his pain into logic. He built a system that could analyze compatibility, predict attraction, and calculate emotional response. It was called SoulSync. In just 3 years, it became the most downloaded dating application in the United States. Every line of code was his personal revenge against unpredictability, his proof that love was nothing more than a pattern waiting to be solved. On the night of his company's 10-year anniversary, Adrian stood in front of a massive digital display that showed the growth of SoulSync across the world. The numbers glowed like constellations behind him: 30 countries, 80 million users, billions of data points processed each day. He raised a glass of champagne to the crowd that had gathered to celebrate his triumph. "Love," he said with a smirk, "is no longer a mystery. It is math. I won." The audience laughed, though not everyone shared his confidence. A few guests exchanged uneasy glances. Adrian did not care. To him, feelings were for those who had not yet learned how to master them. As the night went on, his oldest friend, Ethan Ward, approached him at the balcony that overlooked the city lights. Ethan was one of the few people who still called him by his first name without hesitation. "You know, Adrian," Ethan said, leaning on the railing, "for a man who claims to have decoded love, you look lonely." Adrian gave a soft chuckle. "Lonely? My friend, loneliness is just a variable. It changes when you adjust your inputs." Ethan shook his head. "You talk like a machine." "Machines do not lie," Adrian replied. "People do." Ethan studied him for a long moment before smiling. "All right then, since you trust your system so much, why not test it yourself? Create a profile on SoulSync anonymously, of course. Let us see if your code can find someone worthy of the great Adrian Vale." Adrian turned away, amused but not convinced. "I have no need for such entertainment." "Afraid it might actually work?" Ethan teased. "Come on, just 1 week. If you find someone real, I will admit that your app is flawless. But if not, you have to admit that love cannot be programmed." The wager hung in the air between them. Adrian looked out at the skyline, his reflection merging with the city lights on the glass wall. For a moment, he saw not the confident CEO, but a man whose success had turned his heart into a machine. He finally said, "Fine, 1 week, but do not expect a miracle." Ethan smiled knowingly. Miracles have a way of finding those who least believe in them. As the crowd below cheered for the next toast, Adrian returned to his office and sat before the glowing screen of his own creation. He entered a new profile, concealed under an alias, and for the first time, he typed not as the creator, but as the user. Somewhere in the infinite digital web of SoulSync, a connection was waiting, one that would soon test every line of code he had ever written and every truth he thought he understood about love. Adrian Vale leaned back in his chair, watching the glow of the monitor cast long shadows across his office. The city outside was alive, but inside his penthouse, there was only the soft hum of servers and the steady rhythm of his own heartbeat. For a man who had built a digital empire, Silence had become his most loyal companion. Yet tonight, something about that silence felt heavier than usual. He had entered the system under the alias Adam V. No one would suspect that the creator of SoulSync had just joined his own network. He wanted to prove once and for all that love could be predicted and that every connection was a product of numbers, not miracles. When the screen blinked, the first match appeared EL. The initials were simple, the profile nearly blank, no photographs, no attention-seeking lines. Her bio read only, "I believe logic can lie, but hearts rarely do." Adrian paused. The sentence irritated him and fascinated him at the same time. He opened the chat window and typed, "Define what you mean by that." The reply came a few minutes later. Logic can be built on false assumptions. Hearts, even when wrong, are honest about their intentions. He stared at the message longer than he should have. Something about it felt different. He typed again, "That is an emotional statement, not a scientific one." Her answer was sharp. "You are looking for science on an app made for emotions. Maybe you are in the wrong place." For the first time in years, Adrian smiled a real smile, not the kind he offered investors or reporters. The conversation stretched into hours. They debated philosophy, human nature, trust, and even the illusion of control. She was intelligent, confident, and completely uninterested in impressing him. That alone made her stand out. By midnight, the city below had dimmed into scattered lights, but their exchange only grew deeper. She asked him questions that unsettled him. Have you ever loved someone without a reason? And do you believe pain is proof that you felt something real? Adrian avoided answering directly, but she seemed to read between his lines. Every word she wrote stripped away the armor he had built over the years. At 3:17 a.m., he realized he had been talking to her for nearly 6 hours straight. For a man who measured everything by efficiency, that was the first time he lost track of time in a decade. When he finally logged off, he stared at her last message. "You seem like someone who used to believe in love but got lost in data." Her words echoed in his mind long after the screen went dark. The following morning, sunlight spilled through the blinds, yet Adrian's thoughts stayed with the mysterious EL. He tried to focus on meetings, on new updates, on the endless stream of notifications demanding his attention. But her words lingered. He found himself checking the app repeatedly, waiting for her message, like a variable that refused to stay solved. That evening, she finally replied. "Back again, scientist," she wrote. He typed quickly. "You are assuming I am a scientist. You analyze everything. Only scientists do that," she answered. Adrian could not help but ask, "And what do you do?" She hesitated before responding. "I fix broken systems. Sometimes they are machines. Sometimes they are people." Her answer intrigued him more than it should have. "So which am I?" he asked. She wrote, "I have not decided yet." From that moment, their conversations became a nightly ritual. Every evening, after the world fell asleep, he logged in to find her waiting. They argued, laughed, challenged each other's ideas. She never asked for money or recognition. She never tried to guess who he was. She treated him as if he were simply a man behind a screen, not a millionaire, not a genius, just human. Over the next week, Adrian noticed something strange. His app's algorithm began recommending her profile again and again, even though statistically it should not. SoulSync's system displayed a 99.7% compatibility rate, the highest score it had ever recorded. He double-checked the code. No errors. No manipulation. Just data pointing to something impossible. EL had become the exception to every rule he believed in. And for the first time in years, Adrian Vale, the man who built his life on reason, began to wonder if fate had found a way to hack him. Days turned into nights, and nights turned into something softer. Adrian Vale, the man who once mocked love, now waited for a stranger's message as if it were oxygen. Each evening, he would pour a glass of bourbon, open his laptop, and watch for that familiar username EL to appear. The world outside kept moving at its usual speed, but inside that room, time seemed to slow down, one heartbeat at a time. She was different. She never spoke about her job, her city, or her real name. She spoke in thoughts, in fragments of truth that challenged him. When Adrian asked her why she hid behind initials, she simply wrote, "Because mystery protects sincerity. When you do not know who I am, you listen to what I say." He found himself doing exactly that. For the first time since Celia's betrayal, he listened, really listened. Every message from EL carried something that data could not quantify: warmth, depth, and an unpredictable honesty. One evening, as the rain tapped against the glass walls of his penthouse, she wrote, "Do you ever feel like your success is built on a wound you never healed?" The question hit him like a spark in a quiet room. He stared at the screen, unsure how to respond. He wanted to say no, that he was fine, that success was the proof of healing, but somewhere deep down, he knew she was right. He replied, "Pain is fuel. I turned it into progress." Her answer came seconds later. Pain is also a teacher. If you do not learn, it keeps repeating the same lesson. He sat back, stunned by how her words dismantled his logic without anger or judgment. It was as if she saw through the armor he had spent years building. Adrian tried to regain control of the conversation. "You talk like someone who has lost something too," he typed. EL responded, "Everyone who understands love has lost something. That is how we learn what it costs." He closed his eyes, letting the glow of the screen bathe his face. The storm outside grew louder, thunder rolling through the distance. For a moment, he imagined what she might look like, her expression as she typed, the tone of her voice, the quiet conviction behind her words. The next morning, he arrived at Vail Technologies, trying to shake off the conversation. His assistant Mark followed him through the corridor, briefing him on the latest updates. "Sir, the new Emotion Core patch is ready for testing. The board wants your approval before we deploy." Adrian nodded absently. "Run it through the simulation first. I want accuracy above 95% before launch." Mark hesitated. "Sir, users are starting to ask questions about privacy. The new patch records facial patterns and voice tones. Some people think it might be going too far." Adrian stopped walking. "People do not understand innovation. Privacy is a temporary fear. Progress is permanent." But even as he said it, a trace of doubt flickered in his mind. He thought of EL's words, "Pain is a teacher." Could his relentless drive for control be just another lesson he refused to learn? That night, he logged back into SoulSync. EL was already there. She wrote, "You sound tired tonight." He answered, "It has been a long day. People do not always appreciate progress." Her reply came slowly. "Maybe because progress without empathy becomes arrogance." He stared at the sentence for a long time. Arrogance. The word echoed inside him. He had built his empire on confidence, not arrogance, or so he told himself. Yet somehow, when she said it, it felt true. She continued, "You once told me you created SoulSync to bring people together, but has it brought you closer to anyone?" Adrian typed nothing. His hands froze above the keyboard. She added, "Sometimes we build walls and call them systems." He looked out the window. The city lights stretched endlessly, every flicker a connection his app had made. But what good were millions of connections if he still felt utterly alone? He finally wrote, "Would you ever meet someone you met here?" Her answer took longer than usual. "Maybe, but only if I believed he was real." He exhaled slowly, a faint smile forming. "Then let me prove that I am real." EL responded, "Prove it not with what you build, but with what you feel." Adrian leaned back in his chair. For the first time in years, he felt something shift, a quiet, unexplainable longing. He did not know if this connection was destiny or delusion, but he knew one thing for certain. Something inside him was waking up. And somewhere, behind another glowing screen, EL felt the same. Neither of them could see the storm that was about to begin, the storm that would test not just their beliefs, but their very souls. Days passed, and what began as curiosity had turned into a habit Adrian Vale could not escape. Each evening, after endless meetings and the polite noise of boardrooms, he returned to his private office and opened SoulSync. There, behind the screen, waited E.L., the woman whose words had started to untangle the walls he once believed unbreakable. Their conversations had grown deeper. They spoke about everything: success, failure, regret, and what it meant to be human in a world ruled by machines. Sometimes, their chats were light and teasing. Other times, they felt like confessionals, raw and honest. Adrian found himself telling her things he had never shared with anyone, not even Ethan. One night, she asked, "Do you ever feel that your work took something from you that you can never get back?" He stared at her message. The reflection of the screen in the window showed a man who looked powerful, but lonely. Maybe, he typed, but everything has a price. If you want greatness, you must give something in return. I mean, she replied, some people give their time, some give their heart. I think you gave your soul. Adrian's finger stopped on the keyboard. For a long moment, he said nothing. That word soul felt foreign, almost forgotten. He leaned back in his chair and whispered to himself, maybe it was never mine to begin with. At SoulSync headquarters, things were changing fast. The company's newest feature, Emotion Core 3, was nearly complete. It promised to read not only behavior, but the emotional depth behind every user's interaction. Cameras, microphones, even heart rate sensors all working together to decode human feeling. To Adrian, it was perfection. To everyone else, it was invasive. His head of development, a woman named Claire, approached him during a late-night briefing. Adrian, we need to talk about privacy compliance. If this goes live, the system will be analyzing people in real time, every voice, tremor, every heartbeat. That could be dangerous. Adrian's voice stayed calm but cold. People share everything on the internet already. We are simply organizing what they give away freely. Claire frowned. But should we? He did not answer. He ended the meeting early and walked to the balcony. The city stretched before him, endless glass and light, a mirror of his ambition. He told himself he was right. That innovation always demanded risk, but for the first time he felt the quiet sting of doubt. That night, he returned home and opened his chat with EL. She was already online. You sound heavy tonight, she wrote. What is wrong? Work, he answered. People fear what they do not understand, she replied. Or maybe they understand more than you think. Maybe they fear losing the part of themselves that machines cannot replicate. He hesitated. You sound like you have lived through something similar. I have, she wrote. I used to build systems too, but I realized that every algorithm has a soul, the soul of its creator. The question is, what kind of soul do you put in yours? Her words hit him harder than she could know. For a moment, Adrian almost typed the truth that he was the creator of SoulSync, but something stopped him. Fear, perhaps, or maybe shame. Instead, he said, you speak like someone who knows what it is like to lose everything. Her answer came slowly. I do, and maybe that is why I see what you are trying so hard to hide. The clock on his desk read 2:43 a.m. He felt exhausted, but his thoughts were wide awake. For the first time, Adrian wondered who she truly was. How could a stranger read him so clearly? A few days later, his team reported an unusual system anomaly. Someone had accessed the Emotion Core beta testing files without authorization. No data appeared stolen, but the log showed precise navigation as if the person knew exactly where to look. Adrian ordered an investigation. Find out who did it, he said firmly. When Mark brought him the early trace results, his heart stopped. The digital fingerprint matched a user ID he had seen before EL. He stared at the screen in disbelief. The woman who had been opening his heart might also be breaking into his company's most guarded secret. Outside, thunder rumbled across the Bay Area sky. Rain streaked down the glass like tears. Adrian sat in silence, torn between two impossible truths: that he had finally met someone who made him feel alive, and that she might be the one who could destroy everything he built. He closed his eyes, whispering to the storm, Who are you, EL? The only answer was the sound of the rain and the distant hum of servers still running in the dark. Adrian Vale did not sleep that night. The rain outside had stopped, but the noise in his mind refused to fade. Every thought circled back to one name, EL. The woman who had spoken to his heart as if she knew him, and the same woman whose digital trace appeared inside the most restricted files of his company. By morning, the city looked calm again. The streets glistened with the reflection of street lights, and the world continued as if nothing had changed. But inside Adrian's penthouse, everything felt uncertain. He opened SoulSync once more, staring at their chat history. Her words were still there, glowing softly on the screen, honest and alive. Could it all have been a game? Was she another opportunist, like Celia years ago? He told himself he would get answers. Logic demanded it. At the office, he called Mark into the boardroom. What do we know? Mark placed a tablet in front of him. The access came from an encrypted VPN. Whoever did it knew your system inside and out. But there is something else. The activity was routed through public networks, the kind activists use to hide their tracks. Activists? Adrian repeated, his voice low. Mark nodded. Yes, sir. the kind that exposed corporate privacy violations. The data targeted was from Emotion Core 3, specifically, user consent records. Adrian stared at the screen, his stomach tightening. Emotion Core was designed to analyze people's emotional states in real time. If someone exposed its inner workings, the world would not call it innovation anymore, it would call it surveillance. When Mark left, Adrian remained in silence. He scrolled through the access logs again. The pattern was too deliberate, too careful. He recognized the precision the same way EL crafted her words. Every message she wrote had been deliberate too, balanced between truth and restraint. That evening, he opened the chat once more. She was online. He typed, "Tell me who you are." After a pause, she replied, "I am the same person you have been talking to." He wrote again, "You broke into my system." The reply came slower this time. "You built something dangerous. I needed to see it." His pulse quickened. "So you admit it." "I admit I wanted to know the truth," she wrote. "Do you realize what your program is doing? It is listening to people through their cameras, recording their expressions, storing their private emotions as data. You call it progress, but you are stealing something sacred." Adrian's hands trembled, not from anger, but from the shock of recognition. Her words mirrored his own buried fear, the one he never spoke aloud. He answered, "You think you understand, but you do not. Innovation demands risk. We cannot stop because people are afraid." "Oh," she replied, "there is a difference between fear and conscience. You once told me love could be calculated. But tell me, Adrian, if everything is measured, where does the human part go?" Her use of his real name froze him. He stared at the screen. "You knew who I was all along." Her final message appeared slowly, each word like a breath. "I knew, and I hope you would remember what it means to feel before it was too late." The chat went offline. The green dot beside her name vanished. He tried sending another message, but the system returned an error. Her account was gone. For a long time, he sat there, motionless. The truth had hit him harder than any accusation. She had never been searching for fame or money. She had been searching for proof that even the most brilliant minds could lose their way. In the days that followed, rumors began to circulate. Journalists whispered about SoulSync collecting personal data without consent. Anonymous messages appeared on social media, claiming to have inside evidence of a massive privacy breach. Adrian's board demanded explanations, and government agencies started asking questions. But even with chaos rising around him, his thoughts stayed fixed on her. Who was she really? A hacker? A whistleblower? Or simply a woman who wanted him to find the piece of his humanity he had buried years ago? Late one night, Adrian sat alone in his office, the city below shimmering like a reflection of his own fractured world. He looked at the screen, where her last words still glowed faintly, "Before it was too late." He whispered to the empty room, "It is already too late." But deep down, a voice whispered back, maybe it was not. Maybe somewhere out there she was waiting, not to destroy him, but to help him see what he had truly lost. And for the first time since he could remember, Adrian Vale felt fear not of losing his empire, but of losing the one thing he had just begun to believe in again. The next few days unfolded like a storm Adrian Vale could not contain. News outlets across the country began reporting a potential data breach at SoulSync. Headlines questioned his ethics. Investors called in panic. Employees whispered in hallways. For the first time in years, Adrian felt the foundation of his empire tremble beneath him. Every article said the same thing. SoulSync's new emotion core may have violated user privacy. Some claimed the software had collected private voice recordings. Others accused him of manipulating emotional data for profit. There was no proof yet, but in the age of information, rumor moved faster than truth. Inside his office, Adrian sat surrounded by screens flashing red alerts and messages from legal teams. Mark stood nearby, his expression tight with worry. "Sir, the Department of Digital Ethics has opened a formal investigation. They want the server access logs within 48 hours. Adrian's voice was steady but quiet. "Send them everything except the emotion core prototypes. Those stay internal." Mark hesitated. "Sir, hiding that might make it worse." Adrian looked up sharply. "We are not hiding. We are protecting intellectual property. There is a difference." Mark nodded but did not argue. When he left, the silence in the room felt heavier than before. Adrian turned to the main monitor. The chat history with EL was still there. Her last words glowed faintly on the dark background. I hoped you would remember what it means to feel before it was too late. He whispered, too late for what? He wanted to hate her, to label her an enemy, but he could not. Every accusation she made echoed the fear he had buried deep that, somewhere along the way, he had traded his humanity for control. As the hours passed, his phone buzzed nonstop. His public relations director begged him to make a statement. The board demanded he appear on live television to defend the company, but he refused. He knew words would not change what people already believed. That evening, he went home to an apartment that felt emptier than ever. He poured himself a drink and walked to the window. The city lights below no longer looked like progress. They looked like surveillance, endless eyes reflecting back at him. When his phone chimed, his heart jumped. It was a new encrypted message, no sender ID, just a single line of text. Check the Heartline folder. He froze. The Heartline folder was the most private directory in his system, a hidden storage for raw emotional data collected during testing. He had never told anyone about it. Adrian sat down, opened his laptop, and entered the access code. The screen flickered, then loaded dozens of video, thumbnails, real users, real emotions, people laughing, crying, confessing love through their phones, unaware their reactions had been recorded. His breath caught. He stared at the images, realizing the scale of what had been taken. It was not just data. It was people's lives, their hearts, stripped bare by his invention. Then he noticed something else. A new folder inside the archive labeled Mirror. He clicked it. Inside were recordings of him every video conference, every testing log, every moment he thought was private. Someone had turned his own creation back on him. He watched in horror as one clip played automatically. It was him, months earlier, giving a presentation. Emotion Core will redefine human connection. We will know people better than they know themselves. The video paused, and a line of text appeared over it. Do you see now what you have built? Adrian's throat tightened. His empire, his pride, his brilliance, it had all become the very thing he feared most. A mirror reflecting the emptiness he carried inside. He pushed the laptop away and buried his face in his hands. For the first time in years, Adrian Vale felt powerless. He had always believed he could control outcomes with enough data, enough planning, enough logic. But now, everything was spiraling beyond prediction. When he looked up again, the monitor displayed another message. If you still want to fix what you broke, meet me tomorrow. No technology, no cameras, just you. It was signed E.L. Adrian's heart pounded. Anger, fear, and longing mixed into one emotion he could not name. He stared at the message for a long moment, then whispered, "You wanted me to feel. Now I do." Outside, thunder rolled over the skyline again, as if the storm had returned for one final reckoning. Tomorrow he would face her, the woman who had cracked his system, and the one who had broken through his heart. The next morning the sky was heavy with gray clouds, as if the city itself sensed what was coming. Adrian Vale drove across the bay, his hands tight on the steering wheel, his mind turning with questions that had no easy answers. The address she sent led to an old community garden on the edge of the city, a place long forgotten by the world that lived online. When he arrived, the gate creaked as he pushed it open. The air smelled of wet soil and rain. For the first time in years, there were no screens, no cameras, no data streams, only quiet. He walked along the narrow path between rows of wilted flowers until he saw her. A woman stood beneath a small wooden arbor draped with ivy. Her hair was pulled back, her clothes simple. She looked younger than he imagined, but her eyes carried the same calm strength as her words. "Ilera," he said quietly. She turned to face him. "So you finally used my name." Adrian exhaled slowly. "You left me no choice." "I gave you a choice," she replied. "You just kept choosing control." He took a few steps closer. "You hacked my company. You leaked confidential data." Alara's gaze did not waver. "I exposed the system that was stealing from people without their knowledge. I did it because you would not listen. You built something that reads human emotion like it is a currency. You said you wanted to connect people, but you were only connecting data points." Her voice was steady, but there was sadness in it. Adrian looked down, unable to meet her eyes. "I never meant to hurt anyone." "That is what everyone says," she answered softly. "But intention does not erase consequence." For a long time, they stood in silence. A gust of wind moved through the garden, scattering the petals of a dying rosebush. Finally, Adrian said, "The investigation has already started. The board will blame me, but I can survive that. What I cannot survive is losing you." Ilara's expression faltered. "You never had me, Adrian. You only saw what you wanted to see." He shook his head. "That is not true. You made me remember what it feels like to be human." She looked away, tears forming but refusing to fall. "Then prove it. Take responsibility. Tell the truth about what SoulSync has done. Stop hiding behind algorithms." All Adrian stepped closer until they stood only a few feet apart. "If I confess, everything will collapse. Thousands of people will lose their jobs. My company will be destroyed." Ilara met his gaze, her eyes fierce but kind. "Maybe it is the only way to rebuild something honest. You wanted to create a world without pain, but pain is what makes love real." Her words struck him deeper than any accusation could. He wanted to argue, but he knew she was right. Every piece of his success had been built to avoid feeling, and that avoidance had cost him everything. He nodded slowly. "I will tell the truth, even if it ruins me." For the first time, she smiled. "Then maybe there is hope for you yet." Before he could say another word, the sound of distant sirens echoed from the street. Ilara's eyes widened. "You should go. They are coming for you." Adrian's heart raced. "What about you?" "I will disappear," she said quietly. "It is safer that way." He wanted to stop her, to ask her to stay, but she was already walking toward the gate. The wind lifted her hair as she turned once more and said, "You can fix what you broke, Adrian. Start by saving your soul." And then she was gone. He stood there, alone among the falling petals, as the storm clouds opened once more above him. The first drops of rain fell onto his hands, cold, real, and painfully human. The rain followed Adrian Vale all the way back to the city, soaking through his coat and seeping into the cracks of his thoughts. By the time he reached his penthouse, thunder rolled across the skyline like an echo of judgment. He sat in the dark, watching the storm wash over the glass, and realized that for the first time in his life, he had no plan. The next morning, headlines hit every major news network. Massive data leak at SoulSync, millions of private files exposed. The words burned into his eyes. News anchors spoke his name with sharp precision, their voices filled with accusation. His empire had fallen overnight. The company's stock value collapsed. Investors abandoned him, and within hours, the Department of Digital Ethics seized control of the servers. He received hundreds of messages, threats, demands, pleas for answers, but the one message he kept searching for never came. Ilara had disappeared again, leaving behind only silence. At the emergency board meeting, the room buzzed with chaos. Cameras flashed outside as journalists waited for his statement. Inside, his executives shouted over one another. "We have to deny responsibility," one of them cried. "We can still blame the leak on outside interference," another shouted. Adrian raised a hand, and the room went quiet. His voice was calm, almost gentle. "No, the truth is already out there." Mark looked at him. "Stunner. Sir, if you take the blame, you will lose everything." Adrian gave a faint, tired smile. "Then maybe it is time I do." Hours later, he stood before the press, the cameras flashing like lightning. He took a deep breath and spoke clearly into the microphone. "I am responsible for what happened at SoulSync. I created a system that crossed a line between innovation and invasion. I believed I was building connection, but I was taking away privacy and trust. The people deserve to know the truth." The room erupted with questions, but he said nothing more. When he stepped away, he felt a strange calmness, like a weight finally being lifted. That evening, as he returned home, an official letter awaited him at the door. The investigation was complete. While the evidence proved he had not intentionally caused the leak, he would be held accountable as the creator of the system. The penalties were severe: a lifetime ban from any project involving emotional data, and a permanent resignation from Veil Technologies. He read the letter twice, then set it down. His life's work, everything he built, was gone. Yet beneath the shock, he felt something unexpected: peace. When the media frenzy died down days later, another story began to circulate quietly that Ilara Nguyen, a cybersecurity activist, had come forward during the investigation. She had confessed to initiating the breach, but clarified that her intent was to expose the unethical practices, not to destroy the company. She provided documents proving her limited involvement and insisted that Adrian's cooperation had prevented greater harm. The court acknowledged her statement. She was banned from working in data security for 2 years, but avoided imprisonment. Adrian read the article and felt a single tear fall onto the page. Her words to him echoed again. You can fix what you broke. Start by saving your soul. He closed his eyes and whispered, You already did. The city outside was quiet that night. The storm had passed, leaving the air clear and clean. Adrian walked to the window and watched the faint glow of dawn stretch across the horizon. For the first time in years, the light felt real, not artificial, not programmed, but alive. He no longer owned an empire. He no longer had the power that once defined him. But somewhere out there, the woman who taught him to feel again was free. And in that freedom, he finally found his own. A full year passed before the world heard Adrian Vale's name again. The noise that once followed him everywhere had faded into silence. No headlines, no interviews, no empire. What remained was a man who had finally stepped out of the shadow of his own creation. He moved away from the city's glittering towers and bought a small piece of land on the outskirts of Oregon, near a quiet town surrounded by pine trees. There he began something new, a community program called the Human Code Foundation. Its purpose was simple: to teach young developers how to build technology that served empathy instead of control. He no longer spoke about algorithms or dominance. He spoke about balance, conscience, and the responsibility of innovation. The center was modest, a renovated barn with solar panels on the roof and a wide garden behind it. Children from nearby schools came every week to learn about coding, robotics, and ethics. They planted trees, programmed small robots, and discussed how technology could connect people without replacing their hearts. Adrian often walked among them, listening more than he spoke. Every time he saw a child smile after solving a problem, something inside him healed a little more. One afternoon, as he was helping a group of students calibrate their small AI-driven weather station, he heard a voice behind him, soft, familiar, and steady. You always did like teaching machines how to understand people. He froze. When he turned around, Alara Nguyen stood at the entrance. She looked different, calmer, lighter, but her eyes carried the same quiet intensity he remembered. Ilara, he whispered. She smiled gently. It took me a while to find you. And I thought you disappeared for good, he said. I needed time, she replied. After everything, I wanted to believe in people again, not just in causes. Adrian nodded, his throat tightening. You saved me from myself. She shook her head. You saved yourself. You just needed someone to remind you where to look. They walked through the garden together. The air smelled of pine and soil, and the sound of children laughing filled the distance. Adrian told her about the foundation, how he had used the last of his resources to fund it, and how it had become his way of giving back what he once took. It is beautiful, Alara said softly. You turned guilt into grace. He looked at her with quiet sincerity. I wanted to build something that could heal, not control. Maybe that is what SoulSync should have been all along. Ilara smiled. Maybe this time, you finally understood what connection really means. Oh, they stopped by the garden's edge where the sunlight filtered through the trees. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The silence between them was no longer heavy, it was peaceful. Adrian took a breath and said, When I lost everything, I thought my story was over. But meeting you again feels like a new beginning. She looked at him, her voice soft but certain. Then let it be one. He reached for her hand, and she did not pull away. Their fingers intertwined, warm and real, grounding them both in the present moment. The sun dipped lower, casting golden light across the field. Children ran past them, chasing the fading glow, their laughter echoing like a promise. Adrian turned to her and said quietly, This time, I will not measure it. I will feel it. Alara's smile deepened. Then you have finally learned what love really is. As the last light of the day touched their hands, the man who once tried to calculate love finally understood it not as data, not as logic, but as the simple, infinite miracle of two souls finding their way back home.